In the Netherlands, the International Court of Justice on Friday ordered the Israeli government to take all measures within its power to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza. In Venezuela, the Attorney General Tarek William Saab offered statements on the acts of conspiracy of the Venezuelan far right to lash out against the country. And in France, the main farmers' union won a series of concessions from the government on Friday. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The International Court of Justice on Friday ordered the Israeli government to take all measures within its power to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza. In this regard, the United Nations High Court, based in The Hague, issued a verdict after the government of South Africa filed a lawsuit against Israel for genocidal acts in Gaza due to the ongoing offensive that has already killed more than 26,000 people. In turn, ICJ attorney Joanne Donohoe and other judges of the Hague Tribunal ruled by 15 votes to 2 that Israel must take measures to prevent the killing of civilians in Gaza and all conditions detrimental to their livelihood that could lead to their partial destruction or prevent birth among the Gaza population. In this way, the tribunal will give Benjamin Netanyahu's government 1 month to submit a report on the measures ordered. It should be noted that a final ruling on whether Israel committed genocidal acts could take up to a year or more. In turn, the Hamas group reiterated that it will abide by any ceasefire ruling as long as Israel troops reciprocate. The head of the top United Nations court said that Israel must allow humanitarian assistance for Gaza during the reading of the initial decision in the case against Israel of a genocide in Gaza.
Votes to 1. The State of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Meanwhile, on Friday in South Africa, locals hailed the ruling of the highest court of the United Nations ordering Israel to do everything possible to prevent any act of genocide in Gaza. The International Court of Justice in The Hague issued its verdict in the landmark case brought by Pretoria, also ordering Tel Aviv to allow humanitarian aid access to Palestinian territory. Let us recall that South Africa accused Israel of breaching the 1948 United Nations Genocide Convention established in the aftermath of the World War II.
Perhaps now in this space we're discussing the extent to which it can have an impact. That's something that we're curious to see, especially with what Israel is going to respond with in a month's time as the court has instructed. But I think for now it is a step in the right direction for sure.
The judges have done the work, they've applied their mind, and it's 15 to 1, 16, 15 to 2, 16 to 1, and it's good for our jurisprudence, and it's good for humanity, and I hope that Israel will respect the judgment and will act accordingly.
In this regard, South African Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor stated that this is a decisive victory for international rule of law and an important milestone in the pursuit of the justice for the Palestinian people. But she said that the ICJ must issue a ceasefire order.
I believe that in exercising the order, there would have to be a ceasefire. Without it, the order doesn't actually work. I would have wanted a ceasefire. No, they didn't.
Are you disappointed
but how,
that they didn't specify that?
I have no way that I'm going to say I'm disappointed. I hoped for it, but the fact of delivering humanitarian aid, the fact of taking measures that reduce the levels of harm against persons who have no role in what Israel is combating, for me requires a ceasefire, and I believe Israel would have to attend to how it conducts its search for the hostages and for those Hamas individuals who carried out the October 7th.
Palestinians in West Bank's Ramallah expressed their disappointment by the International Court of Justice ruling on Israel, saying they are unhappy.
It is unacceptable for the world to remain silent, just watching after more than 112 days without taking an immediate ceasefire decision and a decision to bring food and medicine into Gaza and evacuate the wounded.
The ruling is a green light for the occupying state to carry on with its war against Gaza, but rather a soft war. That's the ICJ ruling. The International Court of Justice was required to call for an immediate ceasefire.
We were very optimistic, but now we are unhappy. We feel that the court could have clearly called for a ceasefire in addition to facilitate the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Palestinian authorities announced on Friday that the Israeli occupation army has killed 26,083 people in the Gaza Strip. In this regard, the Gaza Health Authority added that of the total number of dead, more than 18,000 are women and children, and also confirmed 64,487 wounded. None of these records include the bodies under the rubble. This update on the Tel Aviv regime's harassment comes in a context in which the International Court of Justice made a pronouncement on the genocide lawsuit filed by South Africa against Israel. It should be noted that Benjamin Netanyahu's government does not recognize the death toll despite the support of the Red Cross and the United Nations. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, the Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, offered statements on the acts of conspiracy of the Venezuelan far right to lash out against the country. The Attorney General's statements reaffirmed that the opposition, with its conspiratorial acts in conjunction with organized crime, wants to fill the country with blood and violence. In this way, Saab also affirmed that at least 6 persons were charged with their responsibility for the white armband operation for crimes of traiting the country, political conspiracy, classified attempted intentional homicide against the President Nicolas Maduro. In this sense, the Attorney General reiterated that those who plan and conspire against the peace and stability of the country will be punished with the full weight of the law.
We have acted with the evidence in hand, with the elements of conviction, arrest, charge, present before the courts in the 5th plot. But in the 4 previous ones, we already have charges, accusations, and we're going to have a definitive and firm sentence.
The Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, emphasized that the white armband plan consisted in attacking the Venezuelan state from the border states and carrying out an assassination against the President Nicolas Maduro.
The white armband case consisted in the planning of an attack against the 21st Infantry Brigade of the Bolivarian Army, the most important facility in the state of Táchira, bordering Colombia, in order to take over the weapons on the military unit and then make an attempt against the life of the governor Freddy Bernal, and obviously from there to escalate in several states such as Barinas, Cojedes, to reach Caracas, and what has been the obsession of all these subjects to attempt against the life of President Nicolas Maduro Moros in an attempt of assassination.
The Supreme Court of Justice of Venezuela announced on Friday the first decisions on the review of political disqualifications. The highest court of justice of Venezuela has so far informed that the citizens Leocenis Garcia, Richard Mardo, and the former governor of the state of Zulia, Pablo Perez, have been qualified to hold public office, while the disqualification of Enrique Capriles Radonsky is maintained. The decisions of the court were announced within the framework of the Barbados Agreement signed between the national government and the United Platform of the Opposition last October. This is the process of dialogue promoted in the city of Bridgetown in Barbados and refers to the promotion of political rights and the protection of the vital interests of the nation. In El Salvador, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal and some of the members of the voting boards will participate on Sunday, January 28th, in a stimulation of the presidential and legislative elections of next February 4th. On Sunday, 1,505 voting centers will be set up. That is 94% of the 1,595 that will actually be on election day. And in each voting center, a voting receiving board will be set up, each one made up of 5 proprietary members and 5 substitutes. More than 5 million Salvadorans are invited to participate next Sunday, February 4th, starting at 7 a.m. local time in the election of the president who will govern in the 2024-2029 quinquennium and of 60 deputies of Legislative Assembly for the 2024-2027 period. In Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador will propose a prohibition on the use of chemical drugs in the country. The Mexican president indicated that as an initiative of the reform of the Magna Carta is to ban the consumption of chemical drugs such as fentanyl. The chief executive argued that the consumption of fentanyl is lethal, and neighboring countries such as the United States, it is already considered a pandemic which kills 100,000 young people a year. AMLO also affirmed that preventing drug addiction is of vital importance by seeking alternatives to stop its spread by acting severely. In Colombia, the government of Gustavo Petro carried out a strategic territorial mission of the national drug policy in the Pacific coast. The event took place in the Colombian municipality of Tumaco in the framework of the Government with the People public policy strategy aimed at taking young people away from drug trafficking networks, preventing and attending to their consumption, and promoting rural security and the disruption of drug trafficking structures. The Minister of Justice and Law, Nestor Osuna, said that the strategy shows the government's union for the implementation of a drug policy to create a real and sustainable change in the communities. In Colombia, the Investigation and Accusation Unit began its second intervention at the cemetery in Turbo in search of more so-called false positives. This agency, attached to the Special Peace Jurisdiction, the GEP, complies with the precautionary measures ordered by Section of Absence of Recognition. They are deployed in view of the possible presence of bodies of victims of the conflict. The information that ordered this search came from a victim who facilitated the location of the possible graves. Previously, in a first intervention, the GEP recovered in the area 2 bodies presumed to be victims of forced displacement, which are currently under study by Medellin Forensic Medicine. We have come to a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In France, the main farmers' union won a series of concessions from the government on Friday after blocking major access routes to Paris in protest focused on wages, taxes and regulations. Facing his first major crisis as Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal visited a livestock farm in the Haute-Garonne department in the southwest of the country, the scene of the first highway blockades to announce measures. Attal declared that the government will put an end to the rise in the price of diesel used for farm machinery, a consequence of the phasing out of tax breaks on this fuel. There will also be an emergency fund to help farmers fight diseases in their livestock. The siege of Paris followed days of disruption on the highways, as well as convoys of tractors through the main cities and protests in front of the government buildings. The rallies mobilized some 55,000 people.
Over the next 3 weeks, we're launching a month of simplification throughout France, as in this department, prefects will bring together our farmers and their representatives to look at what can be simplified, prefecture by prefecture, standard by standard. At national level, we're going to continue to work with the government and representatives of the farming community to see how we can simplify day-to-day administration, taxation, and the mutualized social the French agricultural welfare system as much as possible, with French Agriculture Minister Marc Fesneau's bill on agricultural guidance in mind. And to prove to you that I'm motivated to see this work bear fruit, I'm starting today and I've decided on 10 immediate simplification measures, most of which are introduced by decree starting tomorrow.
The Russian president accused Ukraine of shooting down the plane with US or French missiles. According to the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, the Ukrainian military intelligence agency, the GUR, knew that there were prisoners of war aboard the Russian military transport plane that was shot down by Kyiv forces. The mandatory added that the full story of the downing will become clear in a couple of days. The IL-76 military transport plane was shot down Wednesday morning over Russia's Belgorod region. All the people on board were killed, 65 prisoners, 6 crew members, and 3 Russian soldiers. The Russian Defense Ministry says the plane was shot down by Ukrainian anti-aircraft missiles while en route to a prisoner exchange in the town of Belgorod, located near the Russian-Ukrainian border.
Two missile launches were recorded from the territory controlled by the Kyiv regime at 11:10. The aircraft was hit 2-3 minutes later. It was almost impossible to react. These are the latest crimes related to the destruction of aircraft. Every time it involves their citizens, they don't hit soldiers. Well, our only condolences are for our pilots. I will ask the investigative committee to make public as much as possible all the circumstances of this crime so that people in Ukraine know what really happened. Well, we are working on every fact. Investigative bodies are working and building up the evidence.
Burkina Faso received on Friday 25,000 tons of free wheat promised by President Vladimir Putin as part of a package for 6 African nations. The grain had been pledged by Putin at a Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg last July, with Mali, the Central African Republic, Eritrea, Somalia, and Zambia making up the group. Burkina Faso's Minister for Solidarity and Humanitarian Action, Nandi Some Diallo, said the wheat showed Moscow's willingness to accompany the efforts of the authorities in Ouagadougou, who face a security crisis. Russian Ambassador Alexei Saltykov said the wheat was a strong signal of the willingness of the Russian president to give dynamic impetus to cooperation with Burkina Faso, one of its strategic partners on the African continent.
Quantities of wheat were also delivered to Eritrea, Mali, the Central African Republic, Somalia, and Zimbabwe. In 2023, Mali was supplied with cereals, fuel, and fertilizer as humanitarian aid. Our country will continue to contribute not only to supplying Burkina Faso with basic necessities, but also to its self-sufficiency in food, energy and technology through the transfer of our expertise, skills and know-how.
The Iraqi resistance warned on Friday of U.S. manipulation to withdraw its military forces from the country after years of malicious agenda in the region. In a statement, the movement stressed that the U.S. acquiesces to the Iraqi government's request to form a committee to set the status of its troops would not have happened without the resistance operations. The group warned of Washington's treachery and its attempt to buy time to carry out more crimes and plans to harm the people and the nation. In this regard, the resistance reiterated to continue with the operations against the foreign presence until the true intentions of the U.S. and the seriousness of its commitment to withdraw the invading forces from Iraq are made clear. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.